approval for the previous minutes.
I move the minutes be approved as submitted.
Second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Staff and community reports. Do we have any?
Vote on the motion to accept the minutes.
Oh, you want to vote on the motion? Second. All right, excuse me.
There's a motion.
So we got a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Attendees: Richard Black.
Here.
Greg Maloof.
Here.
Dan Sargent. Dan Brown. Alec Mosley. Katie Trahan.
Here.
Greg Robbins.
Here.
Ed Provo here. All right, old business. Staff and community reports. Do we have any staff reports, Chad?
I don't have any new updates for you, but I will just give you a glimpse into something that we will be talking about soon. The Sunday School Assembly has purchased some additional property surrounding their current area, and they have made a request for some rezonings of that property. So they have sent me a list, and I've actually mapped out those properties, and I'm back and forth with them now to make sure we have on that list what it was that they were looking at. So we plan to meet sometime in the future. So at a future meeting, I expect them to be here with some requests for some rezonings. And now that it's under their ownership, they're wanting to bring that in for the assembly. Also, they want to talk about a possible street closure that's going to be an internal street once they've acquired everything.
I'd like to address that at the moment because we have more than one street closure coming up in front of us. Any pertinent information that you can share with us on the role of the Planning Commission in street closures?
Sure. So the process is it actually originates with the Planning Commission. It can either be a request of the city to close a right-of-way they no longer need, or from citizens or adjoining property owners who would like to acquire the right-of-way. Okay. So it will come to the Planning Commission first for your review and consideration. During that time, we check to make sure there are no utilities that are in that right-of-way that need to remain. We will look to see if there are any properties that would be losing access or anything detrimental to do away with that right-of-way. If there are no issues with that at all, then the Planning Commission would make a recommendation to the Town Board of Mayor and Aldermen to abandon that right-of-way. And the way the ordinance gets written is half goes to each adjoining property owner. So to what extent a property owner butts on the right-of-way, they would get half of it. It would still go through the ordinance process, so it'd be your two readings, the public hearing, and then if it ends up being passed, it's up to the citizens to go and modify their deeds to take that right-of-way. The city does not do that part of it, just abandon their right to it.
Thank you for that. Old business. Any old business that we need to bring up? Katie Trahan, Commissioner Trahan, you issued a points of concern at one of our meetings recently.
Yes.
Were those addressed to your satisfaction?
No, and I didn't bring them with me, but I would like to talk about them at some point.
Shall we put that on the next agenda, please?
That would be great.
I don't know if you got that or not. Points of concern from Commissioner Trahan.
Can I get a copy from you?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll put it in there next time.
Any further old business that we need to address? Moving on to new business. Those of you that have an agenda in front of you, the Baptist Church Edition is going to move to the end of the discussion. They have someone caught in traffic on the interstate. We will oblige them by putting that to the end discussion. We'll start with the Main Street 16,000 square foot commercial strip center. Tell St. John's Engineering.
Is it your engineer that's caught in traffic? Okay, he's the representative for both of the two site plans.
Gotcha.
Items 1 and 2, or A and B.
So that's who we're waiting on, I imagine. So we'll put that one off too. EV Go Fast Charging site plan for 4 charging spaces at Pilot Travel Center. Is there a representative for that here?
I can speak on that item. I spoke with the company today. When they submitted their site plan last month, there were some initial concerns that I wrote back to them on, and that was the location of the EV charging points. Where they wanted to put them is right next to the entrance. They were going to take away, I think it's about 6 or 7 spaces and put 4 charging spaces right there. The problem is, and in the agenda packet that I sent you, you can see how traffic tends to back up from the trucks that are trying to turn right to get off the roadway and cars trying to pull in and out. It's kind of a very congested area right there. The concern was with the popularity of EVs starting to grow and there being a limited number of spots, is that you'll have people turn right in off of Dixie Lee and stop waiting to cross traffic, trying to pull out to get into those spaces or back in. Or you'd have people hovering around the entrance right there waiting to be next in line to get one of the charging spaces. So what we had suggested is a couple of other spaces on the property. They are looking at that. They said they took it back to their engineering to look at. And I also understood from our last work session, I think the electric utility had looked at it, and their first proposed location there at the entrance, they didn't think they were going to be able to fit all the electrical cabinets and stuff in that area. So there are two other possibilities on the property. The lady I spoke with today from the company said they're going to go back and look at it, and they'll probably push this off till next year because they need to do some reevaluations on the property and see where else they might be able to locate it. But I told them, I said the town was open to those being there, that we just would propose a different location on the property to help with traffic flow in that area.
Sounds good. Any comments from commissioners on this? Mayor? Any?
None.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, for this one, since it was submitted as a site plan, and based on what they told me, I'd recommend denial of it as presented, and then when they're ready to come back with a revised plan, they can do so at any time.
So since they are not here at this moment, I think that automatically does that, does it not? Kicks into the
Well, it's appropriate to take an official action.
Okay.
Anything that comes before the board, like site plans and subdivision plats, the law gives you a set amount of time in order to take action either for or against, and to give a reason for that action.
So commissioners, we have this proposal for charging stations at the only entrance to the truck stop. Most of us have discussed this. We don't agree with it. It needs to be relocated. And I also understand that Sequatchie Valley does not agree with the location. So having said that, I want a motion to deny, if I can get it, please.
So moved.
And a second.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? It is denied. Item D, campgrounds in C3. Randy Hill has been before us on this. At our last discussion, in fact, I guess it was a workshop that it was discussed, we were looking at this as a per individual use reference. Chad, do you have any further comments on that?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. Anyone else? Commissioners?
I do.
Go ahead.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the workshop, so I don't know what was said there, but I can tell you my thoughts.
Please do.
Since we're getting ready to do a master plan, I'm not willing to look at any kind of rezoning or anything at this point. I'd rather have community input and know what everybody wants to do before making a decision on something like this.
Thank you. Chad, did you or was Anya put the plan together?
Anya put that together for you to show you the C3 parcels that would be
Right, what was
affected by
available.
the change. Currently, in your zoning ordinance, in reference to campgrounds, I had listed for you section 513 that covers the requirements for campgrounds. And currently, they are allowed as an allowable use in the C2 zoning district. They are allowed as a use on review in the R3 district, and they are allowed as an approved use in the R4.
Could you repeat that statement about the last two areas that's approved for?
Okay, so the areas where they are just approved, as long as they meet the requirements, are in C2 and R4. R3 is the only other district where you have to come and seek approval from the town in order to be able to have an RV park. Now, I don't know a whole lot of background. I know this was just an item we wanted to discuss. I think it must have been presented to you for somebody who was looking to do that in C3.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, looking at it, I mean, if you wanted to, for C2, I was wondering, would you want to consider that as a use on review in C2 or just leave it as an approved use?
I would personally think it fits C3 better than it fits C2. And I surely wouldn't want to see it residential. So it appears that all aspects of it are a little bit upside down on this particular item. Now, as far as moving forward on this, I am not in favor of putting it as a select use, as you suggested right now. As Katie says, we are in the process of putting together a master plan for the town. And I think that we need to kick this can down the road a little bit and take a harder look at it. Now, do you want us to do that officially with a vote, or just leave it at that since there's no representation?
It's not an agenda item to take action on. It was put for discussion purposes, so I don't know
Yes.
unless there's something you want to be done with the ordinance, I don't know that there's a
I do
reason.
not at this time. I'd like to let it sit. Any further comments from commissioners? Public? We'll do that. Thank you. Truck stops in C3. This is your baby, Chad. Consider moving to use on review with conditions.
Yeah, I had talked with this with Anya numerous times, and with Mayor Maloof when he's come down to meet with us. I think the way it was written, the truck stop provision in your ordinance just allows for it as long as they meet certain stipulations, setback requirements and such, which, the last site plan you all saw did meet those requirements, so that's how come it got approved. But in light of all the congestion and traffic that you're getting at that intersection, I had suggested moving that to use permitted on review. It doesn't give them a by right approval to it. They have to come seek the planning commission's approval. And that way you have the opportunity to ask them for things like transportation impact studies and things of the like to determine if it's appropriate for that area.
Right.
I think you've about reached your quota on what you probably should have for truck stops. It's getting bad at that interchange as it is already. So I'd hope you all would have done this a while back, because if somebody comes to you next month with a site plan and they meet those requirements, it's hard to turn somebody down.
Yes, it is.
And you do have some other vacant property in that area. So my suggestion was to move that to a use permitted on review if you leave it in the C3 zoning district.
Thank you, Chad. Commissioners, discussion, comments? This is important.
I think that makes a lot of sense and probably should have been done years ago.
And it doesn't have to be an end-all. It could be the beginning of another discussion. Mr. Lay?
Why would this not be as part of, it's like the campground done, it's going to be part of the master plan. On campgrounds, you don't want to take any action, but on truck stops, you want to take action. What distinction is there to make that happen, and what is the definition of a truck stop? Is it if a tractor trailer pulls in to a fuel center, is that a truck stop? Like Thornton's, for example, they're very small operations. They're auto truck fuel stops, and they have minimal truck parking. Depending on where you are, they built some in Nashville, exit 62 in Newland, and they'll have 8 or 10 spots, and they don't want trucks to stay there at the fuel stop. And they have convenience store, and they have the food item thing, and it's nothing like Pilot. There's nothing like RBT has submitted before. And so I think it's unfair that they play by the same rules as a much larger operation like Pilot. Originally, Pilot projected to have 600 trucks a day in and out. TA, I think theirs is 600-800 trucks a day, and it's a nightmare out there now. But if Thornton's wants to come and have a fuel center across the interstate where I am, it's not going to affect the entrance to Pilot. So, are you going to differentiate and define what a truck stop is, and should you not do that in the general plan?
I think you could in the general plan. I think one of the issues is the elephant in the room. We have a truck stop right now. It is in C3, an existing one. We have a proposed one that is basically under construction with a permit stop. They're already in C3. That somewhat kind of establishes what we've done, and we would like to have some say-so that if another one comes in and wants to go into C3, there is a way that we can have an open discussion on it. Not necessarily kill it, but have an open discussion.
Well, and rightfully so, but Chad made the statement that you've got enough truck stops. That's not how the American way works.
No.
You get into saying we've got enough truck stops, that's not right.
That's what this commission is supposed to do, determine what's best for our community.
Okay, so free enterprise is not a factor at the Monteagle Planning Commission.
No, I didn't say that. It's obviously a factor, but I also think that it's a huge factor to have another C3 truck stop within our central business district is what we're thinking about. We're not trying to stop them, we're just trying to stop where they go.
Okay.
It's to basically affect the master plan.
That's planning.
Mhm,
But to
it
say
is.
we've got enough truck stops, That's not how it works. That's not how it's supposed to work.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. That's not free enterprise, but it is Monteagle, and we would like to have a discussion on it. That's what we're saying. Let's have the right, while we work up to our long-term plan for this community, to discuss who's coming and where they go. And I think it also is a main player in that overall vision of what we want our community to be. Further comments? Yes?
I just think that, like in your example with Thornton's, if we were looking at that, that's a completely different picture. And so, like when Chad's talking about impact studies and that kind of thing, that would be a completely different requirement than something with the volume that.
But when you pre-qualify your statement, that we have enough truck stops.
I didn't.
No, but it was stated. Chad said that.
Well,
And
he's
so,
not the
you know,
point.
right, exactly, that's my point. I think, and really and truly, it would be no different than if it was a restaurant of some sort coming in, you know, Cracker Barrel that's going to have 80 parking spaces and seat 200 people versus a smaller restaurant that's going to have 40 parking spots and seat 50 people. The same factors play in on impact on traffic control and safety, ingress and egress, and so I would assume you would do the same work on that restaurant as you would that truck stop. Would you not?
I think there's a little difference between tractor trailers coming than vehicles with.
From a business point, or just safety, or in what way?
Yes, all of it. Traffic.
All of the above.
Visibility, everything.
Do you have a recommendation you want to put before us other than putting this into a discussion mode?
No, I just don't think a small operation would be, should have overly burdensome regulations that would apply, like the RBT was supposed to be a big operation. And you look at others out there that's a fuel stop, and I think you go back and look in some states, there was zoning issues and under terms and definitions, and a fuel stop was classified a different classification than a truck stop. Truck stops may have had, you know, like the tire centers out there now in Pilot. They may have a repair shop. They may offer different things that the smaller fuel stops do not want, and the traffic, it's a much smaller operation. And instead of doing 40 million gallons of fuel a year, they do 20 million gallons.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of 600 trucks a day, they have, 150 or 200.
Yeah. So
Nate has something.
that's all. Thank you. I appreciate that. The free enterprise system will certainly straighten us up if we overstep our bounds through a lawsuit. Yes. Go ahead, Nate.
Travis and I are just back here reading the ordinance, and section 540 groups truck stops, fueling stations, parking areas, and service facilities all the same. So they are defined as being and treated one and the same in our ordinance. They are called out, the fueling stations.
Thank you.
Yeah, what it says in your definitions, it says truck stop, fueling station, truck parking areas, or truck service facilities. It's defined as any such land use that provides services to or is developed to accommodate 3 or more heavy trucks, semis, and/or tractor trailers at any single time, whether moving, parked, idling, stationary, for any duration of time.
So I'm going to look for a motion here that we move to use review with conditions on truck stops in C3. Do I have a second on that?
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So noted. Now, what we do with this is we send it to the council for 2 readings, as you all know. So it just doesn't happen overnight. All right. We have in the room now representation from West Main Street and Baptist Church. So if we could go ahead and start with West Main Street, I would appreciate it. Representation, show up for that. All right, let's go to the Baptist Church edition. I know we have them here.
Mr. Ryan, I think you're going to delay it.
Yeah, we'll give them a little bit longer.
Yes, sir.
please come forward. And this is St. John's Engineering.
Scott St. John was here last month at the work
Right.
session. Do I need to present or?
I would like for you to present, please.
Thank you. We, at the work session last month, we were able to talk through some 3 comments that were outstanding, and we have addressed those 3 comments on this revised set of plans, which was to reduce 2 driveway entrances on King Street down to 1 driveway, shift that driveway further from the intersection, and then provide some additional green space adjacent to King Street by reducing the number of parking spaces. And we've also added a note, Chad, related to the setback requirements.
So, one at a time. Chad, comments on this?
So there were a few minor comments, and what Mr. St. John just addressed right there. They have taken care of those. I looked at a copy of the alternative plan that he brought to the workshop last time, and they did address those. Like you said, the concerns were your ordinance requires so many feet from an intersection for a curb cut, and it also requires, if you have so much road frontage, you're limited in the amount of curb cuts you have and how far those have to be apart. And so the numbers on those came out to be a lot lower than what your requirements were. So they have made that alteration to the plan. That was the only big item that was on the plan. I looked at all of the landscaping. In accordance with your landscaping requirements, they've met those requirements on the plan. He even made some alterations where they had to move some stuff there at the entrance. So best I could tell from what I last looked at, it met those requirements. One other thing to note, I had made a note on here about the new building crossing existing property lines. They have a separate plat that was done and recorded that actually abandons that property line across the property, so that took care of that issue as well.
Thank you, Chad. Please continue.
That addresses it. I'll be glad to answer any questions, but I believe, Chad, from our discussion last month, we've swept through all the sheets. We've made that change on utilities, site grading, and so forth. So this is a complete set addressing those.
Commissioners, questions or discussions?
Yeah, if I may, just a point of information. With the work that you've done, there's still adequate number of parking spaces vis-a-vis the size of the building.
That's correct. We had discussions with the church if they were okay in losing those 2 or 3 spaces.
Thank you.
To accommodate meet the regulations.
Okay.
Do we have a motion to approve?
I move we approve the site plan as submitted.
Second.
I'll second that.
Any further comments? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. As approved.
Thank you.
Okay. I think Main Street's here yet, are they?
No, we can
So
move.
we're going to jump on down to Mayor Maloof's discussion about minimum square footage for residential structures. If you will, Mayor, share with us your thoughts on that.
Thank you. That was only a thought I had for discussion at this meeting. People have come to me and said how small is small, and we've gone from 400 to 600 to 800 square feet. I was just looking for a basic discussion of a proper size or appropriate size of a minimum housing unit, single family.
What are the minimums now?
I believe them to be 800.
800, I think. When did we not do that with the initial request with Hardin Properties Hideaway, I think? Go ahead,
I can
Chad.
address that. It varies by zoning district. So what was set in your ordinance for R1, which is your low-density residential district, it's 800 square feet.
Right.
When you go to R2 and R3, it's 600 square feet.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the point this evening is to have open discussion on this. Let's find the common ground that we feel about this. Not necessarily take a vote, but let's get our feelings together on what we think we need to do. So you wait down there, Commissioner Black.
I'm awake.
Share your thoughts with me.
I think they're way too low. The limits, minimum square footage.
Commissioner Trahan?
I think on a single-family dwelling, the minimum square footage should be tied to the lot size, at least in some capacity. If it's a really large lot, Now, I know that there may be some possibility that the lot could be split in the future, so that needs to be taken into consideration. So I'd like to look at how that could be addressed. But if you've got a relatively large lot, I don't think 800 square feet is reasonable.
Having heard that, Chad, do you have input on, we have limits to how small a lot size can be too?
You do. And it's based on whether you have water or sewer available to the property.
Yeah.
Your ordinance is a little bit different. From some I have seen, they have actually set, like if you have multiple units distributed on the property, they have a graduated scale that the more units you add to a piece of property, the more lot size you have to have.
Yes.
I don't think you have that in yours. You just have it strictly based on whether or not water or sewer is available to the property, if it's on septic or if it's on a private well and septic, is how those are defined. So that's how your minimum lot sizes are set. So for instance, in the R1 district, if you have water and sewer available, the minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet. It goes up by 10,000 square feet to 20,000 if you have public water and have to utilize a septic system. And if you have to have that and a well, it's 25,000 square feet. And then when you go down to R2 and R3, those are the same. It's 7,500 with water and sewer, 20,000 with water and septic. And if on a private well and septic system, it's again 25,000 square feet.
Well, as you've notified us all, some of us knew, all that information is in the website address that you sent out in your email, so that we, as commissioners, should look at square footage, size for lots and for homes for this next further discussion. All right, because that is a serious issue with house size, is lot size. I agree with that. Commissioner Rollins, any comments?
I agree with Commissioner Black. I think they're too small. I'd like to see them increase, especially from 6 to 8, maybe 8 to 11.
I agree. I think 800 should be a bare minimum. And the possibility of going to 1,000 if the lot size increases significantly. So I think these are issues that we need to mull over. We're going to put it on the next agenda if we could, Chad.
Sure.
Go ahead, Travis.
Building inspector reference for your consideration. I'm trying to get the recognized number pulled up for the IBC. Some of these houses, I can tell you 4 of them right now within the city limits, in the corporate area of the city limits, that's within 600 to 700 square feet. Some of these houses are being renovated that I'm doing finals and rough ends, whatnot on. How am I going to issue a cert of occupancy on these if we're going to increase this? It's going to have to be a simultaneous thing.
You're going to have to go with the law and the books at the time that they ask for that notice of completion.
That's right.
Yes, Nate?
I'd like for y'all to consider affordable housing issues that are going to come up if you mandate that people build larger houses. And I'll point out that I live in a house that was built here in the 1930s. It was less than 600 square feet, and everybody knows that the Bennett's raised, I think, 4 children in that house, and they did just fine. And if we're going to increase the minimum square foot requirement for houses, we're going to raise the bar for local people to be able to afford any housing at all. And I'm not sure what we gain by pushing the locals out of the housing economy.
So what you're saying is the changes may in fact impact affordable housing in our community.
I guarantee that they will impact affordable housing.
Thank you, Nate. One to consider. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Lake.
Shouldn't the square footage be more important of the house in relationship to the size of the lot, the smallness of the lot, not how big the lot is? I mean, if I own 3 acres and I want to build 800 square feet, what's the detriment to the town for me doing that, as opposed to me building 800 square feet on the what was the smallest one, 10,000 square feet? I mean, it looks to me like that's more detrimental with the density and interference with property, with traffic, so forth, if you do that. But I don't see why you should be worried about me building an 800 square foot home on a 2-acre tract or a 5-acre tract. And like at Cooley's, you can only have 1 residence on that lot, if it's 4 acres or 5 acres or 7 acres or 2 acres. And so are you going to get to dictating to people now what size houses they build?
Kind of sounds that way. Thank you, that's a good point. We need to address
I don't disagree with
it.
you on that. That's what I was saying. You have to look at the different things that could happen with the lot.
That's why we want this discussion. These are all important issues.
Well, I know a guy about 40 acres down here on Highway 20, and he's gonna build him one house there. And
That's right.
what's wrong with that?
We might tell them it has to be 800 square feet.
And was gonna build, and met the setbacks, and it happened to be a 1,000 square foot home, and he still met the setbacks, then that can create safety issues and property value issues and legitimate concerns, I think.
You commissioners, further comments?
I think if we're looking at affordable housing, that's going to be a whole different kind of issue and where you're looking at. And I mean, I don't think you build a house in a area and that's going to be affordable housing in general. I mean, I think that's going to be part of the master plan and how we look at things.
Well, that's what we need. We need to keep drilling down before we make decisions that affect our community. We need to hear every aspect of that decision. Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, when I hear that, it makes me think that we're thinking about affordable housing as something that the government needs to come in and build a complex about. What I'm referring to is simply a local person who wants to build a house, and the 200 square foot difference between 600 and 800 square feet at $200 a square foot, that's $40,000 that it adds to the price of the house, when they may be very happy living in a 600 square foot home. And in fact, that was the norm just a couple of generations ago. And we know when we look at nationwide data that the younger generation is moving to smaller houses, not larger houses. So I just encourage y'all to think about what problem it is you're trying to fix.
That's a good point, and I think the problem is that we have a bad taste in our mouth with tiny homes that's driving this, and it may drive the wrong way when we start to hurt other people.
And we've
Open
defined
discussions needed.
tiny homes, and they're much smaller.
Yeah.
I think we've got to have a solution. But
So you're saying, Nate, you're saying a tiny home is affordable housing?
no, I'm saying that a 600 square foot house is not a tiny home. And to go against a 600 square foot house may be trying to address a problem that simply isn't there. We've defined tiny homes differently, and I'm sure Chad has it in front of himself, I don't have it right here, what that square footage is for a tiny home. But our zoning ordinance already defines it, limits it to R4, and we don't have any R4 in our town.
All right. Further comments?
Well, how many of these are being built today right now? How many 600 square foot homes are they lined up to build them? And
I have no idea.
Mr. Building Inspector, are you overwhelmed with all that?
I'm sorry, Dean, I'm still...
On the 600 square foot home building applications right now, are you being overwhelmed, or is that problematic for you?
Case by case, yep, definitely.
Good discussion. Come prepared to continue it at the next meeting. Hope all of you will be back to discuss it with us. It's important.
And just so you all know, I only brought it up because people asked me to bring it up.
Right.
I understand all the comments. I think they're very valid comments, regardless.
Thank you.
Next item.
West Main Street. Are we here now?
There's
Commercial building.
All right.
Similarly, at the work session last month, we got to review these, Chad and the group, and there was some discussion related to the sewer force main
Right.
that progresses across the front of the site. And the building is out of that easement. The front parking is partially in it. There were 2 trees that we had in landscaped islands that fall out into that easement. We were asked to reconsider those, pull those into just a striped asphalt, take the trees and relocate those, and we have done that.
Chad, have you had an opportunity to review this?
I've not seen the updated copy, so I'd like to walk over and take a look at that.
Please do.
But while we're on the topic of this, there were a couple other items I'll address then before we look at that. There is a signage plan that is required. That'll go to Mr. Lawyer for their signage permit, so they will need to submit that once they apply for their building permit. That was not reviewed as part of this package.
Right.
I also reached out to TDOT about this driveway connection, and that was, it's been weeks ago when they first submitted the plans, and they have not gotten back with me on that. It does meet what the minimum width requirement is, but a lot of times they'll have certain stipulations when they look at it on the drainage or certain ways they want the driveway or approach angles to be from the state route. So that's something they'll probably be asking the engineer. Have they talked to you any more about that?
No, as we discussed last time, when I submit the application, I have to turn in a state approved or a city
Yeah.
approval. I understand you have kind of more of an informal
Right.
discussion with them, but I've not had contact.
Yeah,
with them.
what we typically ask for when we have a site plan or even a subdivision plat come to us on a state route, we will submit it to either the Region 2 office or the local office if it's a subdivision. And they will usually give us an email that shows tentative approval. And basically, it's saying we have looked at the location and the width and don't see any problems, and it complies with the driveway connection manual that the state has in place. That is what I submitted to them. They have not replied back to me on that. So any approvals that be considered on this would have to be contingent upon the approval of this driveway location. Because if they want it shifted one direction or another, they have a detention pond on the side here that would be on the south end. That could affect that area too. So that could come into play. But that was one issue. The signage was the other. And then, like I said, with the sewer easement, there had been some original discussions about what was the possibility of moving the building back.
Right.
I had recommended against that based on the fact that they have rear parking. It's angled parking in the back.
Yeah.
But this also proposes two drive-throughs. One would be on the north side of the building, one would be on the south side of the building. So the concern was where it's located, if cars start backing up around the back of the building, you need that extra lane width. So the compromise that was made, since it was only those two landscape islands that showed up in the sewer easement, it sounded like the town would be agreeable if they would just move that out of the easement.
Right.
The other issue, and I brought this up when your attorney was here last month, and unfortunately you couldn't be here for this tonight, there was some wording we wanted to talk about on, once this goes through, when you start paving over the sewer line easement. The agreement that I found that was recorded did not mention anything about who's responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of that easement. So most easements, you can restrict the building on top of that easement, but in a lot of cases, you do have pavement that will go
Right.
over it. But if you have to come in and make repairs to that sewer system, there was nothing in that ordinance that specifically said that it would be, the town's responsibility to put it back, or be the owner's responsibility to put it back, since they're the ones who paved over an actual easement. So that was some language we had talked about that we may want to get included in something going forward so that it's clear if you have to do anything to that line, who is responsible for what costs.
That language be a city ordinance?
I don't know that you could pass a city ordinance, but basically I think it's something that probably needs to be recorded to go with the deeds. Because there, in your agenda packet, there are a number of properties that sit through here. In fact, I'm looking at this one here. There's about probably 12 to 14 different parcels of similar size.
Right.
And that easement cuts across all the front of those properties. So it will impact all of them in the future as those develop out going south.
Information question. Signage. Does the planning commission usually address signage?
I don't know if that's an item you have typically addressed. Most cases, it's usually the building inspector that will review that.
Yes.
There's a permit that's required. But I did see in here that it mentions a signage plan being approved as part of the site plan process.
That's kind of odd. I would have thought that would fall under the purview of the building inspector instead of the planning commission, that we take an overview instead of work with the details like that. So where does that leave you with us? Do you, as I understand, the landscape islands came out that gave us access to our lines without putting them under your building. So now the odd man out is who is responsible for the patch and repair if we cut open those lines to service them, correct?
Yes.
There was discussion on that, yes.
That and an approval from TDOT for the driveway location. And we don't need the permit in place, we just need to know it's okay for the location so they can move forward and
Gotcha.
apply for a building permit.
Gotcha. Any comments, commissioners, on this? Any other?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't understand. There's a sewer line that goes the length of the property. What is the setback from the front of the building to the sewer line?
There is, you just have to stay off of the easement with the building. So we essentially, zero setback. So, but we have not gone to that extent. We have pulled the building roughly 11 feet or so off of the easement so that there is adequate room for maintenance to be done.
Exactly. Thank you for that. Just want to make sure.
Mr. Law, are you comfortable with that?
Very much so, thank you for the adjustment.
Sure thing.
One other thing to keep in mind, not only will, if there is a breach in this line and there's a repair needed, if it happens in the front of that store, it's going to shut your business down as well. Just, you need to know that. I don't know who's going to be responsible for the recovery efforts. But that store will not be in operation if there's a repair in the front of that building.
Kind of a rare bird to happen.
We're talking 10 feet from the front door.
Yeah.
And the client understands, knows that city force main will have some maintenance at a point in time.
Yeah.
And it could, well, it does run the length of your lot, the subject lot, so it could be the front door, it could be the side or the edge property line.
Chad, have we got any outstanding items would not allow us to vote on this?
I don't believe so. That addressed it. The site plan looked really well from all the other standpoints of your ordinance. I looked at all the landscaping, and as your ordinance says, you can approve an alternative landscaping plan. So where they are moving those trees from those landscaped islands elsewhere,
Yes.
I think that suffices to still take care of that need. But as far as the rest of the landscaping goes, it met all of your minimum requirements, and I didn't find any other major issues with the site plan. The sewer line easement was the biggest concern, and like I said, that's something we probably need to be back in touch with the city attorney on to see what can be done. Because it's not just this property, it affects a number of other
Everything,
properties
yes.
for future development. And perhaps on the building permit, it might be something that should be noted at that time when they apply, that there should be some comments on there helping to understand that until you get something in place that better defines what can and can't be done.
So I understand you're comfortable with it, except we need to address the sewer line easement, the cut and patch responsibilities where they fall. And I'm kind of thinking that's a city council thing.
It is.
And should we pass that on to them, a request?
It would not hurt because they do need to look at it and make a decision on what needs to be done with that.
We'll work on it. Thank you, Chad. Do I have a motion?
Can we not, I mean, is it spelled out anywhere, or can we determine who is required to do the patch, the cut and patch?
Well, typically, if somebody does something on a public utilities easement, the utility can come in and do whatever they have to at any time they need to repair it.
Right.
And, you know, I don't know the legal answer to who would be responsible for that cost because it was the property owner who built on top of that easement. City would allow them to. And so that's why I said it's more of a legal question. I don't know how to best answer that, what's most appropriate for the town. But like I say, I do know it's a very important thing to be addressed because last thing we're going to do is go in and, you know, shut down the business for a week or two trying to do stuff that costs them revenue, costs them money, and then, you know, it's going to be expensive to put back because if
Right.
they put in a really nice, expensive asphalt or paving job that you'd have to go back in and do it, you know, it's a really nice job, and that's a lot of expense to the town taxpayers as well.
The sewer is a city function. It's their responsibility. I think we'll pass that on to council to adopt that. Further comments? Anything? Public comments? Mr. Lay?
Typically, the easement spells those things out that I've done with utilities. I've done them with the town of Monteagle. It doesn't say anything. I've got one with East Tennessee Natural Gas Company that comes through my yard, the 50-foot easement. They've been in my yard 2 or 3 times since 1998, and they have to put mine back as they found it.
Right.
And the last time they spent $33,000 on my yard.
I know they love you.
And I required them to fence off their 50-foot section and stay within that. And they had big pieces of equipment, and they said, well, we don't know if we can stay in this. And I said, well, what can we do? And I said, you can get a court order.
Yeah.
And they stayed within their 50 feet. But typically, these things are worked out in the easement that the property owner gives to the town of Monteagle or whoever they're giving it to. You've got an easement on a piece of property of mine across the road from where he's talking about, and every time I ask about the line coming from the lift station, I call it the Pizza Hut lift station, comes across my property and then goes under the road and ties into the line they're talking about.
Right.
I said, you need to mark that off, define that. You have an easement, but it doesn't define, you know, a description of where that is. Well, the city says, we don't know where it is. I said, what do you want me to do? I'm talking about the utility department. And they said, well, just, you know, do whatever you want to do, and if it's a problem, we'll have to deal with it. So that's where we are on that easement.
I don't want to go there with our.
No.
Dean, you know how we came about having a forced main I'm guessing 150 feet off of the right of way? So it looks like it's up in the old gun field to me. So it's going to really impact all the businesses as they tend to.
What, 12 or 14 lots impacted there? I think you
Well,
said.
they came through coming from what used to be sewer plant 1, which is now the pumping station,
Right.
is my understanding, and built sewer plant 2. Then they come under the interstate and they have what I call the transmission line going to the sewer plant. And then the engineer came up with the thought, I believe I'm right on this, I may not, it was when Obama was president, we were shovel ready for our project, we got like $1 million grant or something. But they said for a little bit more money, you can go on the front of this and run you a sewer line through there for future development for other people to tie into. And Haley and Company was the engineers on that.
Right.
And Anthony Pelham, I think, Debbie, was one of the guys that had brought that up, and the city council looked at it and decided to do that. Lexi Orr was involved in that. Lexi can enlighten you on that. And it was thought to be an enhancement for future commercial development. Basically, I think you got 2 lines somewhere down through there, but the best I recall.
Well, that's where I was going with it. So is there, I'm asking if there's any utility people in here, because I recall there being a forced main closer to 41A. Maybe I'm thinking of the main water line you put in back in the late 80s. But this is going to be a negative impact potentially to all the future sites all the way down there.
Yeah, I think your main force line that was coming through seemed to me like they said was too pressurized, or it was too involved to put something small on it. There were issues, and Haley and Company threw that out as an enhancement option. Like I said, there was some grant money, and seemed to me like it was a $40,000 or $60,000 deal, and they jumped on it thinking whatever they did was going to enhance commercial development. And it went the full length. And just like the time they put the water line coming back from Cooley's there for the emergency line. And then it just dumps out. It dumps out on the north side of 41 there, and just runs in a culvert and runs under the road and ends up in Monteagle Lake. You've got that line in there somewhere. I don't know if it's shown.
Well, our lack of organization on that should not impede this development going forward, I don't think, but it is something that we need to address with the council. We might need to get Travis Wilson's opinion on this also. All right. Further discussions? Motion to approve?
Do we need to have a motion to approve with some conditions?
Yes, and I think that condition is that the council approves this, adopt some sort of language to protect themselves.
They at least need to review what they have, because what I found out there was not very specific on that easement for when it was recorded, and I just wanted the attorney to look at that with the town and make sure that it addresses everything to protect the town's interest, but also the business owner as well. So
Right.
I just need to be revisited. So that, the driveway connection from TDOT, and a signage plan.
Okay, so we have 3 issues now that we have dovetailed with this, and that is signage, the TDOT approval, and this sewer line issue, this force main issue. So do we want to attach those to the approval? Requirements necessary?
Yes.
Those are the still outstanding items that would need to be addressed to meet your requirements in your zone.
Do we want to wait till we address those issues before we approve it, or can we attach those improvements to make it necessary?
According to your ordinance, it gives you a number of options for approving site plans. One is with some contingencies. I think the contingencies we've talked about are appropriate for the situation that's been given. But like I say, as they apply for the building permit, that's something that just needs to be noted and cleared up
Okay.
on that easement. It's
And
not to say
under-
they can't use it, because the Dollar General, it crosses their property too. So,
Yes.
but it's just something that for future, it just needs to take care of all of
I
those
agree.
properties down there and more clear.
Further comments or motions to move forward?
Well, let me make a comment for clarification. The TDOT situation cannot be addressed until we approve it here. Is that correct? The TDOT,
He
I didn't
has-
hear that.
He has something that you tell you on that one.
Yes.
the TDOT requirements are that they're talking about.
Yes, so that is correct. We cannot make full application to TDOT without a letter from the local jurisdiction saying they have approved the site plan. We understand that Chad has a good working relation. They talk, they bounce things off for preliminary, but we cannot submit for a full application. We know that we've centered the entrance in the center of the lot would be edge distance and
Right.
corner requirements, all the requirements of TDOT, but we cannot submit. We understand that needs to be contingent.
So is it, Chad, fair to say that you and Mr. St. John do not see a problem with TDOT once the planning commission or the town gives approval?
Well, I can't speak for them
I
as
know
to
you
what the
can't speak,
location
but-
is, but like I said, they're going to grant access to the property. It's just
Right.
where that location may be or the width of that thing is the only thing that may change. If it deviates from the plan, and if it's a lot of deviation, they may have to come back to the planning commission to get that reapproved to get the permit. But like I say, they will usually give me a tentative approval by email, but here lately I've been having lots of trouble when I submit things to them. I give them a deadline, tell them when the planning commission's meeting, and I just don't hear back.
Gotcha.
And unfortunately, I hear back on some, but not all of them. And I keep trying to follow up. So that's the only thing. And what he's saying is they will not grant that official permit until the planning commission has approved the site.
Right, understood.
I have a question. If we approve it with these conditions, will those conditions be noted on the site plan?
They will be noted in the minutes, and there is a signature block that is required on the site plan. So what will happen is until those conditions are fulfilled, that signature block, the signature will be withheld from the planning commission. One is for the property owner to sign stating they've met the landscaping requirements and they're going to maintain it. The other is for the planning commission to sign stating they have approved it. So what will happen is that will just hold on the signature of that.
So I won't be signing
And
that until these conditions fall.
that's
in.
correct. And I mean, one is just getting the thing from TDOT, which hopefully we could get pretty quickly if we try again, but that's a minor thing. And the other thing is for the city to work out, at least at their next meeting, to discuss if there's anything they need to do or if they can at least move forward. And that may just be talking with the utility manager and Travis Lawyer on what can be done about it. It may be, if your attorney says it's sufficient enough to move forward now, that may be something they can do and go ahead and get the permit and then work out something better to put on the actual easement agreement and work that out later on. And then the signage plan is something they can submit when they do that. So those aren't major issues. But like I said, they'll just hold the signature, which means until they fulfilled those and got the site plan signed, then they won't be able to apply for the building permit.
Thank you, Chad. Further discussions?
Well, and normally if you're gonna attach something to, have an easement change, you're gonna have to attach it to the easement for public record.
Right, and that's
50 years from now.
right, and that's probably what they need to at least look at. The document I found just didn't seem to address much about that sewer line easement. That's why I thought it was appropriate to look at it again. And that's something they may have to go back and renegotiate with all the property owners. But like I said, it's going to be in everybody's interest to make sure it is appropriate so that you can build on it and use it, but then you understand who's responsible for what if you have to
The
get in
city
there.
council writing something is not gonna attach it to the easement. It's gonna have to be legally attached to the easement.
That's correct.
So I'm not sure how we get, I don't know how you get there.
It seems to me that it should be something noted on the site plan of what the agreement is. Or that our condition says that it has to be something that goes with the building permit. But like it has to be agreed upon prior to receiving the building permit. Somehow. I mean, I don't know what the document is, but I feel like it has to be, part of our condition has to be that.
Looking at it from building inspection side, this is the only enforceable moment you have to attach this to that. Because after we go out of this room, it's non-enforceable because this one's gonna be grandfathered in. This is updated ordinance.
That's right.
Well, if we make it conditional, it's not. They still have to meet those conditions.
Well, like I said, I'm not equipped to tell you whether or not what is recorded is appropriate for the town because you have had other structures and parking lots built on top of this easement But when I started reviewing the site plan, I know that was an issue for the town as to what all was going to be covered up on that easement, proximity of the building. So I started trying to research to find out what was recorded. And what I found just didn't give me much information one way or the other, because I was trying to find out, can you even build on this site plan? Over this easement, can you pay where, what can you do? And it just wasn't specific.
So maybe the condition has to be that there's an executed agreement regarding the,
Which there is an official easement that does exist. It just doesn't describe what can be done within that easement.
Yes, Travis?
Can we not come up with the owners are sitting in the room, their engineers in the room, can we not come up with the exception that that he's gonna assume the repaving, we're gonna assume the line work, he's gonna assume the repaving, something to move this forward for the property owner as long as he's agreeing on that.
That's my desire, is to move it forward. Go ahead.
And I've talked with the owner here, and yes, he understands there is an easement in place that has the legal discussions in that document, but he's willing and understanding that the city council may review it, may attach some maintenance on him, and he understands and is okay with the council reviewing that. So he's open to it becoming a condition of approval tonight here to go on to city council, and that he's willing to work with the council and get to the point that they're mutually agreeable on the long-term maintenance.
Thank
even
you.
if it falls on him.
Thank you, we appreciate that.
Mr.
Thank you.
Patel, is that statement correct? Okay.
So without hurting the client by holding up this project, I think we've got an issue that we're talking about. We need to actually change the easement writing process.
Well, I'm not sure. That's why I said it needs a review by your city attorney.
Right.
And that's when he was here,
And
he's
to do that goes backwards to address all the other property
And he
holders.
may look at it and say this is sufficient, or he may point out to a state statute that says you're covered under this statute, there's no need to. But I know when he was here at the workshop last time, he said it's definitely something we should at least look at and consider just to make sure everybody's protected all the way around.
Is he going to get back to you on that?
I've not spoken to him again on it.
Mayor, you want to follow up with
I will
that?
be following up. But
All
quite
right.
frankly, I understand all the discussion, and thank you for that cooperation. I'd rather wait for the attorney's interpretation, amending the easement if necessary, or whatever other action is appropriate. So if you don't mind, I'll be in touch. We'll get that easement, probably have a conversation so we can resolve it.
I guess my question is, can we still move forward on this?
I saw it as being able to move forward as a condition.
I would think with conditions we could too.
Have a question down there.
You got a hand up.
Yeah, I'm just-
Go ahead, Nate.
Is there a reason why you cannot approve the plat subject to the owner assuming the responsibility for repairs beyond, in the event you need to dig it up and then it's done, we don't have to do anything as a city council. It's just attached to the site plan that it would become this owner's responsibility to fix his parking lot if we have to dig up our line. And then it doesn't seem like there's an enforceable time beyond today for us to address this. If that's the only issue, is there, Chad, there may be a reason why we can't.
Well, the only thing is, there's one way is to give conditional approval based on something in the ordinance, but the planning commission doesn't have the power to state who's responsible for cost or something like that's a city thing. So they can move forward with a condition of this will still need to be met or addressed, or if it's something in the ordinance needs to be addressed, but they don't have the power to say the property owners are going to be responsible for city property and vice versa.
I understand. So it becomes a different negotiation for the landowner with the city council.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So we would just kick it down the can to the council and make a decision.
And that's just to reevaluate and determine if what's recorded is appropriate, or if there's any further action needs to be taken before they build on this property.
So I'd still like to move forward with this, with the conditions that we've discussed attached. Any comment about that? Further comments on moving forward on that basis? And if not, can I get a motion?
Somebody's gonna have to remind me what the conditions are.
Chad, would you repeat the three conditions that we agreed to?
Sure, we'll start with the easy ones. The first
Signage.
being that we do need some tentative approval from TDOT as to the driveway's location and connection point. The second is a signage plan being submitted to Mr. Lawyer for his review and approval along with the permit. And then the third is to have the city board of mayor and aldermen and their attorney, or the mayor and the attorney get together and at least determine if there's anything that needs to be addressed with this sewer easement before development occurs.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan with conditions that get TDOT approval as far as the access and egress area, and the signage plan being submitted and approved, and some resolution to the who's going to pay for what over the building on the east.
Go and get the mayor and the council to determine. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Well, I have discussion on the motion.
Go ahead.
If I may ask one quick question.
Discussion on the motion.
Do you have a timeline for construction and moving forward in this development?
Timeline should be probably next 3-4 months.
I'm sorry?
Should be next 3-4 months as soon as.
Before the year's end, you think?
Yes.
Okay.
As everything is done on the legal side from the attorneys and everything, like engineering part, architecture part, and everything.
Okay, and I understand that there's more work to be done. But is it to start construction, you think, in several months, or you want to be completed in several months?
No. Completion shouldn't be before a year because the way everything's going, it should be at least a year.
To start.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
Okay.
you.
Further discussion on the motion?
Could we get a clarification on Robert's comment for the force mains? I think what I'm hearing is a subject for approval with the owner taking responsible for the repairs to the parking lot in the event of a force main failure.
Correct. That's the way I understand it too.
Is that?
That's fair. Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, last item on the agenda. Set earlier time for the Monteagle PC meeting and move meeting dates to the third Monday. Would be an update to bylaws. Mayor Maloof, and you put this on here. Any discussion you would like to have about what's driving this for us?
Yes, thank you. There's consideration as far as people coming to this meeting. We're trying to, this was not etched in stone. We're trying to find an appropriate day and time to have a planning commission meeting. When the discussion first started, my feeling was there was quite a time lag between the mayor and alderman meeting the end of the month and the planning commission meeting the following week. And therefore, for the mayor and alderman to take action, the developer would be waiting 3 or 4 weeks, whatever it was, to decide on the planning commission recommendations. I was trying to shorten that time period for the sake of development. The time of the meeting doesn't matter, it's whatever the discussion leads to. I just understand that going too late in a meeting, you start losing concentration and people are looking at their watches. So if people are comfortable with a 5 o'clock meeting or a 5:30 meeting, or whatever works for them, I'm just bringing up for discussion an appropriate date and time.
This is an open discussion. Okay, that addresses the time. What about the date? That was also a request. Any
Well-
discussion about why you want to change the date?
Just to be a shorter time between the planning commission recommendation to the mayor and alderman meeting so that they don't have to wait the month theoretically.
We move at lightning speeds. All right. Having heard that, open discussion.
Mondays don't bother me. I mean, that's what day of the month it is. Doesn't matter what week of the month.
Well, part of setting the schedule is, Chad, what days are you free?
This is the one that the day before your regular meeting worked best for us. But I know from watching your city commission meeting last night, I know Mr. Rain had some comments about wanting to have a workshop a week before the meeting, which would fall on the same night as your planning commission meeting. So I didn't know how that might work into what you're considering for that
Well,
as
the
well.
workshops for planning commission, as I understand it, and I don't mean to speak out of turn, is at the call of the planning commissioner chairman. So I'm not addressing workshops, I'm addressing what's a good time and date for the
Right, and
planning commission meeting.
And that's fine, that works for us. I was just concerned with it conflicting if you end up doing a workshop for your city meeting, if that would conflict with the time we were planning for this meeting.
My opinion on workshop is that we're going to have many less of them.
Yeah.
All right? They need to address specific, detailed items that we need to have open discussion on so we don't do it twice in the same evening, both in the workshop and in the meeting. So my personal opinion is it doesn't concern me about the time or the date, but I think it needs to be taken into consideration with all the commissioners. And also, the council is having an issue with this, and I don't think we can expect the council to change bylaws if they're not comfortable with it. So we may need to move in unison with the city council on this. And I don't think you had any headway as far as determining when you were going to do that, did you?
Well, the issue was the time. I think it's spelled out in our rules that it's the last Monday of the month,
Right.
as I recall.
Yeah.
The time, again, it was just accommodating the people to be here. As some people had different schedules, obviously. You can't please everybody, obviously. So it's just coming up what makes sense in a good consensus.
Let's do a head count of commissioners. Richard, you say you really have no issue with it?
I don't have any issue with third Monday. I don't have any issue.
Katie, do you?
The third, I don't care what day it is.
It's the time.
It's the time. It is, I mean, I can get here at 4, but it's hard to catch a day short.
Oh, 4 was just a test time. If 5 is better,
Yes.
based
I
on
don't
things,
think, I don't
that's
think
fine.
the time is much of an issue.
It kind of screws up your whole afternoon if you got to be here for.
Yeah, so we're looking at 5 o'clock. Mr. Rollins, any input?
I'm good with the third Monday, 5 o'clock.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
The only thing I wanted to bring to your attention is there's a lot of developers, surveyors, engineers that have to attend a Winchester Planning Commission, the Manchester, and the Tullahoma Planning Commissions that are all the third Monday, starting at 4:30 to 6 o'clock. So
Good point. Hey,
I'll also point out that the third Monday is the time that the city council has been having its workshops for the last 30 years. And so to your point, we haven't decided when to settle on those. That would be a direct conflict for what we've traditionally done.
any further comments? Go ahead, Mr. Lake.
Maybe the city council needs to change their meeting day.
Apparently, we're going to talk about
Throw a
that.
spanner in the works there. All right, so let's,
Well, if Monday's an issue and 5 o'clock is okay, can we do Tuesday? That'll be the council workshop. They can be ready for the planning commission meeting. If Monday and Tuesday are such an issue.
I'm going to address this to our present council members, if I could. Y'all are going to address this, I take it. You've got to figure out when and where you're going to meet. And I think we need to follow your lead on this because we don't want to conflict with you or your workshops. I will recommend we kick this one down the road too for a month. Let's see what the council comes up with. Let's see if the council can come up with something about this.
I suggest we say what it is.
Thank you.
The planning commission meets on Tuesday. They've always met on Tuesday. Leave it on Tuesday.
But move it up to 5.
Let's have a workshop on Monday. Why are we changing?
See, I don't see the date as a big deal, but the 5 o'clock, we don't want to get into the workday, but we don't want to keep everybody here to 7:30 and 8 o'clock at
5
night.
o'clock's fine.
5 o'clock seems to be an accepted, agreed time. It's just the date.
So we'll work on, so when is the next meeting of the planning commission?
Well, it's going to be the 5th of September at 5 o'clock right now, I guess,
Okay.
if that's convenient. We'll stay with the first Tuesday. We've been jumping around times. The bylaws say 6. That seems a little late. All right. Let's try it at 5 on the next one, and we'll carry this discussion a bit further.
And that's the 5th of September.
I believe it is.
Yeah, I think the 4th is Labor Day, which is a
Yeah.
Monday.
That is it. All right.
I have the handout here.
All right. We've got hearings of persons having business before this commission.
Mr. Stanfield? Yes. Mr. Stanfield dropped off this packet that I'm passing. I told him that we would have discussion, he could have presentation. I don't know if we're prepared to rule on it, and I don't even know if Chad had received any information.
Are you aware of this?
I talked to
Been
Mr.
involved in
Stanfield in the
discussion?
parking lot tonight about
Yeah.
it. Before we came.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, does everyone have a copy?
Here.
Richard?
Well, you just don't.
You don't need to, you know what's going on there.
Well, I know
Hey, that's one.
the basics, I mean.
All right.
Yeah, it's very preliminary, I mean, it's not.
Okay, I'm Tommy Stanfield with 621 Cumberland Realty in Jasper. And I was approached a little over a year ago about finding a hotel site here in Monteagle. And the Harton family owned the property that we wanted to get and build another hotel right beside the other hotel that's there. The property that's between the Harton family and Dean Lay's property is owned by Francis Gilbert, who lives in Alabama. That's part of the old railroad property that John Acuff bought
Okay.
years ago. Her property is too shallow to ever put any kind of a building on
Right.
it. And, well, she has an inflated sense of what the property's worth because she got everybody else cut off.
Yes.
And we could never come up to an agreement on the property. Then I had a convenience store come in, wanted to come on the property. Couldn't do it because there was no access. Then I had one auto parts store. Approached about it, still the same thing again. We just couldn't get anything worked out. And then there's a group out of Knoxville had a couple of fast food restaurants that they wanted to put on the property. Monteagle seems to be the hot spot right now. Kimball is full, and it's just priced out of the market. And so
Traffic counts have gone through the roof.
Monteagle's really hot. I'm getting calls from people, and I don't know how they're getting in touch with me, but they're interested in property in Monteagle. So, and I finally just washed my hands of it essentially, and it just didn't seem to be any way that we could work it out. And I told Ms. Gilbert that I just wasn't interested in continuing on like it was. And I got to thinking about it. I thought, well, there's got to be a way to work this out. So I came up with the idea that if she would give up this frontage right here, if you look to your second page, Dean Lay owns 2 acres. The Harton family essentially has an acre, and Francis Gilbert has an acre. If you look at that proposed plat, you'll see that each one of them will get the same amount of acreage that they had. Dean Lay will still have 2 acres, but he will have frontage on Main Highway. Dean is giving up a good portion of his property behind there to make this work. Francis Gilbert is giving up all of her frontage except for the portion that she would get, and the Harton family would have road frontage coming out there. Now, to make this work, the town of Monteagle would have to abandon West College Street.
So at this point, this is nothing more than a land swap?
It's essentially a land swap.
Okay.
There are utilities in place there, but I think they're on the south side of West College Street. The setbacks would need to be enough to set back to cover those utilities. And that may be a little bit more than your standard setbacks. Dean, you may know where that line is.
Yeah, I think you've got it in a C1 now, so whatever the front setbacks on C1 is. And that's not an issue. I mean, it's just, the issue is going to be the same thing that they had here earlier on site plans and stuff. If it's a parking lot and it's paved, or, and it's, the owner's going to have to worry about that. So, but it's not a problem. The only problem that I'm aware of, the property line, my west property line, Harton's east property line, there's an old roadway that comes through there, and I think there is a line, gravity flow going down that or coming back. I think it's going down to go to
Plant 1?
Yeah. But anyway, that's out on the main road. There's no issue, but there won't be an issue. But I don't know that other one possibly could come into play.
It would probably fall in the side setbacks.
Okay. But that's all I'm aware of. And then my only concern that I've relayed to him is mine would be contingent upon me getting a driveway entrance from Tito. Because it does me no good if I don't.
None of them would be. none of them would work without the T-Dot
Understand.
driveway.
Question, Mr. Stanton. This is for Nate. How does this impact the Mountain Goat Trail?
It doesn't, except that this is all within the scope of the current bridge project.
Right.
And so, this whole road is being redesigned right now. So
Right.
now would be the time to have the conversation with TDOT. Because I think, I'm not sure whether they're gonna have to require right away from y'all. Are you aware, have they had those conversations yet?
When I talked to TDOT, and they said they did not have any definite plans now, I asked if they had a timeline. He said yes, between now and 10 years.
Well, they told us they're gonna be ready for construction by 2025, so I'd circle back with them. They're in design. They're done with preliminary design.
There's some talk about putting the exit off just to the right past Sonic. Has that entered into any of this?
I think, well, the mayor may have more up-to-date information. But
I do, I just didn't want to interrupt.
Go ahead, and if you have
okay.
more up-to-date information.
My understanding is they had one community meeting here. They go on a second at their request, setting a date and time. They want to make wider exit ramps. Where they wind up, they're still working on those plans. I'm not sure that they even have a preliminary set. They had something to show us with a roundabout somewhere in the vicinity of Waffle House and a peanut somewhere around Wren's Nest Road. But their work would continue, as I understand it. They're not sure what side of the road, correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, where the Mountain Goat Trail would be. I did not get a definite answer on that question.
I think that'll be on the
Follow up
side.
on that, Nate. The Mountain Goat Trail will be part of the right-of-way of the new road. It will
Correct.
not impact this property.
Correct.
That was a question I had.
That's what they were thinking.
Right.
But there's no final set of plans that we can point to one way or the other.
No, I think the thing that these folks probably know more about than I do is that the impact may be that they were still scratching their head on how that intersection with 41
Right.
was going to turn. And that would have an impact on Mr. Lay's concern about where his curb cut will be allowed to be put in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but
that's-
also that work on Old 41, as I understand it, goes to Catherine Street, which is CVS Paparon's. So they're going to go a little bit past 41 to get to Catherine Street, and then there's other work to get us down to DuBois.
Mr. Lay, you have a comment?
Yes, the current state right-of-way is the edge of the asphalt there.
Is it?
Yes, they have no additional right-of-way into what I call the railroad property.
Right.
All the way through there, where Subway is, all of that, back during the day, all that was brought up, and we had TDOT come up and designate based on, used to it's a two-lane road through Monteagle.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they put the interstate in, and they said that the railroad property goes from the edge of the asphalt in front of me over to West College, the beginning of West College, and that's not 100 feet. Typically, they said they had 100 feet, but that issue was cleared up. And then the other thing is, when we sold Marriott, the people that's doing the Marriott, they're coming basically to the existing I-24 bridge now. And their site plan is about to be submitted, I think. They've got an issue on retention pond relocation. I talked to them today, and I've got to meet with Joe Lester and get that worked out for them. And then I think they're ready to submit that. Chris called me today and said, they're hot on wanting to get it done.
Right.
And so there's a couple of little things he says that we need to do to accommodate that. But my point is, TDOT has never contacted us as property owners about any acquisition of any property. The railroad bridge ends at the beginning of our property, which is the interstate right-of-way thing. That's not an issue for us as property owners. And we've already conveyed the 2 acres for Marriott, so I do not see them coming past the guardrail with anything.
Okay.
So the guardrail would be, there's a sidewalk there.
TDOT does what it wants.
Yeah, and if they want to reimburse the Marriott
Right.
people and tear the Marriott down, put in the GO Trail, they can do that.
All the railroad right-of-ways is 100 feet. And if you look on the left side of the back sheet, it shows you where the 100-foot strip went.
Okay.
And actually, 12th Street is actually probably all, West College Street is probably actually all part of the railroad right away.
Actually, it was at one time, but when Mr. Acuff sold that railroad property, and of course this hasn't been sold, but what he did, if you read, it was by quitclaim deed,
Yeah.
subject to all easements known and unknown. And so my position, and I think the current mayor on that property at one time, I don't know what his position was, but the city has maintained that as a city street, and I don't think anyone can claim ownership of that. It has been the legal opinions and the facts.
Okay.
And you can't get 100 feet anywhere through town. It'll be they own College Street. So Mayor, are you gonna let them sell part of College Street?
I'll need more information. I don't know.
Okay.
It's just,
Nate?
but let me, well, if I can continue that for a second. I know from the December freeze on Christmas Eve, there is a water line that is in the vicinity of College Street.
Yes, it's.
Okay, I just want to say it out loud.
Understand that.
Okay.
And the same thing would have to apply. Anything that they built would be back behind, would have to be back behind that.
So behind that would put them from about halfway of College Street back into the property.
Well, they've got,
Because it ran someplace along College Street, as I recall.
Well, and
with the break.
developers don't care. They just want the road front.
they just, all they've got to do is,
Yeah, they don't
we're
want
trying
the
to get
building
those
up
two
there.
property
They're not
owners
building
where
over
they
the
have
roadside.
road.
They just want
You're in front of us to get closure on College Street, and that is the only thing. Your land deal's your business, obviously, but you're looking for
Well, no,
us.
you have to approve, you'd have to approve that as a new plat.
That wouldn't be an
And you're
issue.
doing College Street to get access to the main highway, basically for entrance onto the property. Now, a quick question for Mr. Lay, if you're prepared to answer it at this time. Are you leaving the existing buildings there? I see that you have on the second sheet, you have, the third sheet, you have a total of 4 acres, it seems to be, but you're giving up the 2 acres. So are you leaving the existing buildings there?
I'm gonna end up with the same amount of property
Right.
that I currently have, basically. And in order for that to happen, the railroad property, whatever that is, from the edge of the state right of way back to South or West College Street, if the city abandons West College Street and it goes equally to adjoining property owners,
Right.
then I'm intact. I've not gained any property. I've given up a bigger chunk on
That's my
the west
question.
end
Yes.
to make this work. I have access from 41. It's not as desirable. I can sell it and still build whatever I want to on it and not get hardly as much money. The lady that owns the railroad property, nobody's gonna buy that.
Right.
Joe Lester's property, when I say Joe Lester, I refer to the Harton Family Partnership property, that gravel lot this side of the motel. A lot of people think the motel owns all of that, but they don't. There's about 8/10 of an acre that joins the track where they're wanting to do the subdivision. It comes up there in an L shape, but they don't have access to that. When the city dead-ended West College on me,
Yes.
he has no access to the public. They should have put in a cul-de-sac and connected him or done a cut with TDOT. But anyway, so you have basically, the city could gain 3 valuable business sites
Yes.
for the town to receive revenue on.
West College Street is a dead-end road.
It is now.
exists
It
just
used
on
to
your
go all the
property.
way, it used to go all the way to Renfrew.
Right, but now it's a dead-end road, and it seems to exist only on your property, correct? Or in
Yes.
front of your property?
Yes.
Okay, thank
This
you.
is probably your most valuable property you've got in Monteagle right now.
That's a nice piece of land.
And I turned down offers for mine, wanted to buy, different things, but it's not gonna, it would benefit me slightly, but in one sense, but the only reason I'm going along with it is it's gonna open up that whole thing.
Yes.
And they're probably gonna go on Harton Family's lot first, and that's fine with me, I don't care. I told McDonald's when they come, they wanted to buy my lot, and they wanted me to agree not to sell to anybody. They named 15 hamburger joints, and I said, no, I won't do that. And they said, well, we won't locate on your property. I said, that's fine. And you may.
The hard
tax on
property
it.
may be a solution to the issue they're in the midst of right now, too.
But city, to me, it's a win-win for the city. You're gonna get 3 potential sites for development. You're gonna abandon a stretch of West Cottage Street that you don't have to maintain. You still have your easements on your utilities. So what is the negative for the town of Monteagle? That would be what I would ask.
Mr. Stanfield?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Go
can I
ahead.
ask you a
Go
quick
ahead.
question here?
Yes.
So Dan, you brought up a good point. The Hideaway subdivision
Yeah.
comes out on the Harton side. I recall on their site plan that there was an easement that overlapped your property. Am I misreading
I
that?
sold them a piece of property on 41 that I bought that allowed them, they were gonna use that, they bought that piece just in, I'd have to look at the date, in the last 12 months.
For their second entrance and exit.
Yes, yeah, there used to be an old road through there, it was a toll road, some guy, Payne Toll Road. And it was like 50 or 60 feet wide and 400 feet long or something, and the dude was in Florida, Mr. Mays, and he wanted to sell it, and it was like the railroad property, nobody wanted it, because you couldn't build anything on it.
Right.
So I made an offer on it, because I thought one of these days, Hardin family will need access from 41 going to Pelham, so I bought it, and I just held on to it, and then lo and behold, I sold it.
All right, well,
Now, the Park
let's stick
family-
our net here. You're here in front of us for road closure. That's it. That's your only source
No.
right now?
No. Correct, Chad, that would require a new plat, wouldn't it?
Yes, sir, it would.
What would that have to do with the planning commission?
You have to approve the plat.
Can I ask you, do the deeds reflect the right-of-way for College Street there? Because I know the tax maps don't. Is there something that talks about the
Does what
width
there?
or location of the College Street right-of-way that's there to be abandoned?
City has an ordinance that lists all city streets, and that's on there. It doesn't specify the width, like most city streets in Monteagle aren't specified in the deed references and stuff, because it was done before the incorporation.
Right now, it's just.
But that road has
maybe
been
30
there,
feet.
that road has been there before there was a town of Monteagle.
That was the Fairmont College Road, wasn't it? Before
No,
DeVos?
Everybody, they used to call it down by Dick McFarland's. And it went through, there used to be a big old dip there, wasn't there, Debbie? Seemed like, yeah.
Well, anyway,
My property's in 3 parcels.
Do you have these in?
I do. I do have that.
That will show you where 12.
That's what I was looking at.
Where
So,
College Street is.
once again, let's get back to what we're trying to accomplish here. You want us to do a road closure on West College Street. You're going to submit a unified plat for approval, correct?
Yes,
That's what you're looking for, the planning commission.
that's right.
But the planning commission doesn't close roads. Wouldn't that go to the mayor?
Yeah, we do. I think we do road closures, and I think we pass it on to the council, don't
You
we?
make a recommendation
Right.
to the Board of Mayor and Alderman.
Make
We
a
do
recommendation.
that.
Now,
Like I
the
said,
Harden family, their plans are to bring their water line up through this property instead of going along 41. Their plans are to
We
connect.
can't talk about the Hardin family.
You want
We
to-
have a lawsuit with them.
Oh, well, okay.
No, it's some kind of funny name, they're just gonna rule on it.
I'm not
Okay,
going
the
for
plans
that
are
again,
There'll
Mr.
be a
Lake.
water line that will go through that area. It will go along the property line.
So, and you came today to try to get our preliminary blessing before you invest funds to go ahead with the major site.
Right. But also, a developer out of, or a realtor out of Murfreesboro has 3 parties that would be interested in these 2 lots.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's your business.
The Harton and the Gilbert lots under the proposed plan.
What other properties does this College Street, I mean,
It doesn't touch
does it
anything
go
else.
behind the bank, Tower Bank, or?
Originally, it went all the way through there, originally. And the school buses used to come up, instead of pulling out on the road, they turned left and went behind the depot and came
Yeah.
down the Tower Bank, and that was the original continuous thing there. And then it got changed, and they
So from Tower Bank all the way to behind the depot, behind Ray Banks is already been?
Yes, that is not now. And I don't know that it was ever a city street, but it was a thoroughfare. And of course, there was a water tank there, and there used to be a milk processing barn there, and there were businesses that had access to that.
So let's move on. I don't think we're going to vote on anything right now, but I do want to get the commissioner's input on favoring this process so that the gentleman can move forward with his business. So, Mr. Black, you have any comments?
I don't, I'm kind of neutral at this point until I get my hands around it.
Mr.
Do you
Trahan?
have any questions?
I don't.
Okay.
I would just need to see some more information on what's in the road and all of that, but I don't have any negative feelings.
That would be on the site plan that they would prepare after our initial blessing.
Well,
As long as
Mr. Rollins?
as long as the hideaway easement that I asked Dean about is not in conflict with that, I think it's a great idea.
The hideaway has nothing to gain or lose on this thing.
Right.
But the only reason I bring it up is that was a proposed egress route for that. I just couldn't remember where it
Yeah.
fell on that.
Well, if you go down there and look, if you're standing up on top of the property looking north at the Harton property, there's about a 40-foot drop off there.
Right.
That where they filled, when they had the little R curve deal, Nixon filled all that in for them. It was just a big old hole. And then that created the bank back there. And so they're cut off from using that as an access. I mean, unless it's going to be a zip line.
Mayor, comments?
No, I don't have a problem with it. Obviously, it has to go, a recommendation from here to the mayor and alderman as to what to do with the street, but as much information as you can do without running up large bills might help the mayor and alderman decide on the future. Like, if there are sites that are coming that are beneficial to the town, if you don't mind coming to that mayor and alderman meeting, maybe to present some concept before we get too far down the road, that might help.
We had it all under contract except for Dean's, but we couldn't get it worked out.
Mr. Lay?
The city council's going to say we can't do anything to the planning commission.
Yeah, we have to go through it first.
Well, that's what I mean.
We
They make the
realize that,
recommendation.
yes. He's kind of got the cart in front of the horse there, but
Yeah.
what you've seen is you have the blessing of the planning commission to move ahead with putting your presentation together for us to vote on and pass the recommendation on to the council. I think I said that all right. Chad, that
That's what I
correct?
tried to say.
Yeah, I think we need to look to see for sure what's there now as far as utilities go and exactly where this easement or right-of-way is located, since our maps don't show it other than just a line mentioning there used to be a road there.
It should be part of the site plan.
Right.
That
Well, now
information.
that's up to them if they want to move forward with that, because we need to investigate and make sure that it's fine to be abandoned, which this does eliminate a lot of problems with this property. I mean, it's a good
Right.
plan if that can be abandoned,
Yes.
utility-wise. And then we'll also have to get with TDOT to make sure they would grant driveway permits to each of these.
Correct.
Yeah,
It would
they're
all
good
be-
with that.
it would all have to be subject to TDOT.
Yeah, and that it,
Ms.
TDOT's
Stanfield?
not going to answer that question until there's an approved site plan, is what somebody
Correct.
said.
We'll do that.
well, they won't.
Thank you, Mr.
driveway
Stanfield, for your
connection
presentation. I
They
think
would tell
things
you-
are
They wouldn't
positive
give
in
you
your
driveway
direction.
connection
Just
permit, but they would tell you if they
Those
would
three
be
good
willing to
pieces
approve
for you.
driveway.
Absolutely. It's good for the town. That's what we want to do.
Thank you much, appreciate it.
Yeah, they would tell us if they would be willing to grant, because, for instance, I got a preliminary subdivision plat in another city. It was on a state route, and I submitted it to them, and because of the topography and terrain, they said they would not approve driveway connection. So they'll give you feedback one way or the other if they grant it. So, I mean, if that looks good, and the easements are okay to be abandoned, or if this town has to maintain any type of easement, or if they want to put in one to share to the Harton property or whatever, that would be reflected in the plan. So we'll do some investigation on it. If it looks like it's okay to move forward, this looks like it'd be a pretty good plan for the property.
Thank you, Chad. Any further business, commissioners? Motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you all.